Is that on? I don't want you to miss a minute of this. My name is Tom Kerner, and I am an alcoholic.
Hey, Tom.
Through the grace of God and with the help of Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been continuously sober in this fellowship since September 15, 1978. And for that, I continue to be grateful. I have a sponsor. He has a sponsor. We sponsor people. They sponsor people. We're all active in service. And, we try to pass this on. And that's what we do. I'm glad to be with you tonight. Folkestone's always got a special place in my heart. I got sober. I came in rural atmosphere down in Portsmouth, Ohio. And there wasn't not a meeting every night down there. But it was smaller groups, and we got to know each other. And I think that's where my ego problem started, because I'd go into the meeting, and there'd only be about 10 people in there, and, it had to be a Monday night, and I'd come in Tuesday, and they'd say, "Hi, Tom," and all that, and I thought, wow, smart people. And then Wednesday would come along, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm pretty important. They got to know me. And it dawned on me after I'd been sober a little while that these were the same damn people I was seeing every night. So I even started to learn their names. We're going to talk a little bit about the steps. This is a real condensed version. And we usually do about 10 weeks, and we're just going to do 4. We're trying to give you an overview of things and what we do and what we think stems out at us. There's no way in hell we can do this justice, but we're glad to be here with you tonight. In the first 5 steps, at the end of the 5th step, it says we examined, our first 5, steps that we had taken. Is our work solid so far? So that tells you we're really laying the groundwork. Step 1 says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And there's 2 parts to step 1. And a lot of people come in and they say, well, I don't have any problem with the alcohol part. And, who the hell does? By the time we get here, it's obvious. It's the second part we have problems with. Our lives had become unmanageable. And I don't give a damn if you're a day sober, a week sober, a month sober, a year sober, a decade sober, that manageability creeps back in there. We have to fight it every day if you're like me. And, that's what gets me in trouble today. I've worked all the steps. I continue to work them. I do 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis like the book tells me. But I still have problem with the manageability part of it. And step 2 says, came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. A lot of times in the past they'd say we came to, and we came to believe. It doesn't say we have to believe in a certain being. It says a power. And that's a difference. It asks me to believe in a power at this point. Is there a power greater than me? Sure. If there wasn't, I wouldn't be here. And then the 3rd step, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand them. And before I really got into studying the book, I really didn't understand how that step worked and how important it was. Because if you're just reading these steps off the window shades, you're missing the point. Step 3 in the big book says selfishness, self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our trouble. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. So those first 3 steps come that way. One of my favorite things is step 3, that's selfishness, self-centeredness. I've been sober a while and I'm still plagued by selfishness, self-centeredness. I get up in the morning, the first thing I think of is me. Now, you've taught me different. I start, then it gets out of my head, and I'll start to get into my daily routine. I'll start to do what step 11 says. I think of the day ahead. Step 10 says, what I did the night before, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, and when these crop up. So, it all comes together. I always spend a lot of time on step 1. Because when people go back out, in my experience, not because they didn't do 4 perfectly, nobody does. It's not because they did 6 halfway, or they didn't do all the amends, or they did an inaccurate amend. It's not because of that. It's because of step 1. Step 1. We get healthy and sometimes we forget, if you're like me, that I'm an alcoholic. And, I'm an alcoholic. And part of that alcoholic is manageability. I got this, don't tell me what to do. That's why in chapter 3, which is entirely devoted to step 1, it gives us 2 tests we can take to see if we're alcoholic. Okay? Physical test, and there's the obsession test. Now, if that interests you and you need to take a test, you're an alcoholic. Normal people don't need to take tests. Normal people don't need to taper off. Normal people don't need to cut back a little bit. Normal people don't have to do a lot of things. It's obvious, but sometimes we forget there's a difference between normal people and us. A normal person will take alcohol and it does something for them. It relaxes them. I take alcohol in me, and if you're an alcoholic like me, I get alcohol in my system and pow, something happens. We want to do things. I want to go places. Let's go to California. We'll take your car. We need some money? Yeah, I know the guy that'll give us some. Yeah. But I want to do some action. We want to have activity. It treats me a different way than it does other people. When my wife was alive, she was a normie. And I would say to her, Sue, when's the last time you had a drink? And she'd have to think a minute, and she'd say, geez, I don't know, maybe I had some wine last Christmas, or maybe it was the Christmas before. It wasn't that important to her. But you ask an alcoholic, well, when's the last time you had a drink? Well, I haven't had a drink in 3 years, 4 months, 2 days, and 5.5 hours, and a few seconds. That's the way we are. We're focused on that type of thing. And that's the kind of stuff that really comes back to hurt us. Higher power, it always reminds me, and I don't have a problem. Today, I call my higher power God. There's no problem, but we have people come in and they have a problem with that because, as the book tells us in step 2, it asks us, in step 2, chapter 4, it asks us to lay aside prejudice against religious terms. And, because sometimes we come in and we were brought up with someone else's conception of God. And the book tells us, we don't have to, just because we rejected their conception of God, doesn't mean we rejected God entirely. And that's an important point that, we need to learn from that standpoint. If you're like me, it kind of smooths the path out a little bit. Before I turn it over to the real star of the night, well, I'm reminded of a story, speaking of God, and this goes back to, when Adam was the only person alive, and God came around and he looked at Adam and he said, Adam, he said, he said, what's wrong? He said, you're looking awful sad, you're down in the dumps, what's going on? And Adam said to God, he said, well, God, he said, it's kind of lonely. He said, I got nobody to talk to, and nobody to share things with, nobody, to interact with. I'm lonely. God said, I got just the answer for you. He said, you know what? He said, I'm going to create another being, and I'm going to call that being woman. And this woman is going to be your partner. And she'll love you, and she'll have your children. and she'll wash your clothes when they're dirty, and she'll take care of the children, and she'll feed you and raise food, and if you ever have an argument, she'll be the first to admit she's wrong, and she'll apologize to you. Adam said, "Wow," he said, "that sounds terrific." He said, "God, what's that going to cost me?" And God said, "That'll cost you an arm and a leg." Adam said, "Well, what can I get for a rib?" Johnny Tatum.
I thought you was going to talk a lot longer than what you did now. Alcoholic Johnny Tatum. Home group's the Lawley Primary Purpose Group in downtown Lawley, Florida. Sobriety date February 14, 2003. If I say anything that pisses you off, he's my sponsor. Just bypass me. He's the one that told it to me, so y'all just leave me alone. Just go jump on him, okay? All right. And Big Daddy, we talked about step one. A lot of us there's three, really to me, there's three parts to step one. First part, admitted we are powerless over alcohol. I'm powerless over alcohol for two reasons. I cannot control my desire for it, and I cannot control my consumption. All right? I wish I could. If I could have controlled my desire for it, if I lose one part of it, I'm okay. If I lose my inability to control my consumption, but I still have my desire for it, so what if I drink a beer every day, or 2 beers? All right? If I lose my desire for it, and if I do drink, I lose control, but I can stop for not to say no for a couple of years, then I'm okay. But when I got both of them together, I can't control my desire and I can't control my consumption, I'm bad at it. All right? And we can go into it about the allergic reaction. And most of us get the physical part of the illness. Most of us get the physical part of the illness. It's the mental part of the illness that really throws us off. And there I want to go to page 35 of the big book and use this as examples. So the first example is a friend we called Jim. His real name was Ralph Furlong, I believe. This man has a charming wife and family. He inherited a lucrative automobile agency. He had a commendable World War record. He's a good salesman. Everybody likes him. He's an intelligent man, normal as we can see, except for a little nervous disposition. All right? He did no drinking until he was 35. He's a late bloomer. And we'll see that. See, there's no set standard when this is going to hit you. I've worked with guys who've been a 5-time loser at age 22, been in 5 institutions. I've worked with guys who were 60s before they really came to the program, okay? There's really no set age or set standard when this is going to happen, all right? But now here's the truth about old Jim. See, in the chapter more about alcoholism, we could change this chapter to more about the lie, okay? Or more about the insanity. And it's going to tell us the truth, his truth. It's going to tell us the lie that he fell for, or the insanity. Then it's going to tell us the truth that he ran back into again. Here's his truth. He did no drinking until he was 35. In a few years, he became so violent when intoxicated, he had to be committed. So the truth about old Jim is, when he gets to drinking, he gets fighting mad, and he gets put away. That's the truth. The truth never changes. At this point, we have to ask ourselves, what's your truth? The truth about me is this: once I do anything, I'm drinking everything. And that truth will never change. It will you don't know how many pure juicers I've worked with who thought they could take pain pills. I never had a problem with drugs. Well, you're going to. You don't know how many dopers I worked with that thought they could drink wine. You know, wine is natural. You know, it's a natural path right back to the dope, baby, is what it is. All right? Anything that makes you feel single or see double, you can't do. All right? I'm sorry, baby. All right. But the truth about old Jim, and ask yourself, what's your truth? The truth is, once I put anything in my body, I'm doing everything I can get to put in my body. Okay? That's the way a lot of us were. On leaving the asylum, we came in contact with us. We told him what we knew about alcoholism, the answer we had found. He made a beginning. Started going to meetings. His family was reassembled. He began to work as a salesman for a business he had lost through drinking. All went well for a time. But he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. So how do you enlarge your spiritual life? That's the question here. Well, this book never asks a question without giving you the answer to the question. The answer to that question is on page 14. Now, Bill, I'm going to set the stage for you. Bill's just had this he's worked the steps with Eddie in the Towns Hospital. He's had this wonderful spiritual experience, and this is what he says about it. He says, as I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics. Now, that word hopeless, why do we keep using that word hopeless without explaining the real reason we're hopeless? This is why I'm a hopeless alcoholic. The only way that alcohol is not going to kill me is for me to engage in total abstinence. I'm hopeless because I got a mind that will not allow me to do that. That's why the alcoholic is hopeless. The only way he's going to make it if he never drinks again, but he has a brain that will not let him do that. You're hopeless. It says, who might be glad to have what we have been so freely given. Perhaps I could help them, and they in turn might work with others. My friend had emphasized, now that word, I went to Bradford County High School, graduated in 1979. Reading and writing was not a requirement. I have a very limited vocabulary. See, what we really do up here is Big Daddy comes up here and gives you the educated side. And I come up here and give you the old dumb redneck side, okay? But I understand that word emphasize. It's a pretty big word. I can't spell it, but I understand the meaning behind it, okay? The absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. The principles of the steps. Because if you'll turn back on page 13, you'll see exactly what he did. All right? So that's the absolute necessity. Jim didn't do it. It says, particularly was it imperative that I work with others as he had worked with me. I really can't spell that word imperative, but I understand it's a pretty strong word. So he set down two things I'm supposed to do. Work the steps and work with others. Jim didn't do it. It says faith without works is dead. Now I know where that comes from. It comes from the book of James in the Bible if you look it up. James was Jesus' half-brother. He really wasn't a believer in the beginning. I mean, that was my older brother. He beat the hell out of me. He ain't God. No way. Well, they done something. They killed his brother. And then about 2 weeks later, his brother comes by and says, hey, James, let's have lunch. Step 2, James came to believe. And James says even the devil believes in God. I don't want to hear that bunch of crap about what you believe. Show me. See, we want to sit around and talk about what we believe. This program is about showing what you believe. That's why that statement's in there. It says, how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if the alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work of self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive certain trials in those spots to come. That one sentence is where we lose 80% of the future Alcoholics Anonymous members. Because they are not going to work at self-sacrifice for others. They are going to work for themselves. Jim wouldn't do this. Jim fell for what I fell for in my first year. Meeting makers make it. All I got to do to stay sober is go to meetings. Picking back up. All went well for a time. But he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. To his consternation, he found himself drunk a half a dozen times in rapid succession. On each of these occasions, we worked with him, reviewing carefully what had happened. He agreed he was a real alcoholic in serious condition. He knew he faced another trip to the asylum he'd pick up on. Moreover, he'd lose his family and he had deep affection. He knew the truth about what would happen, but he had no defense against the lie that caused it to happen. Y'all know the voice of alcoholism. The voice of alcoholism. It says, take a drink, baby. Take a drink, you can do it. Talks you into taking a drink, and the next day that same voice says, I can't believe you drank. The same voice that talks you into it is the same voice that condemns you for it the next day, the voice of alcoholism. Yeah. It'll say, slap hell out of them. They deserve to have their butt beat. So you slap hell out of them. Then the next day it says, I can't believe you're such a bad person. It says, straighten them out at the group. Straighten them out at the group. You give them a cussing at the group. Next day it says, I can't believe you talked to them that way at the group. You can never go back again. Remember, alcoholism has 3 goals. To separate you from God, to separate you from your loved ones, and finally and often fatally, to separate you from yourself. And it goes in that order. It'll remove you from any power of God that it can. It'll turn your loved ones against you so you have no help. And next thing you know, you're looking in the dadgum mirror and you don't even recognize the person you're looking at. You don't even resemble the man or woman you thought you was. And this is where our buddy Jim has ended up. On page 36, it says, yet he got drunk again. Talked about what happened. He came to work. He was irritated. Had some words with the boss man. Drove to the country to find a salesman. Stopped at a roadside place. He'd gone there for months when he'd been sober. No intention of drinking. Sat down, ordered a glass of milk. Then it said suddenly. Suddenly. See, here's the lie. Here's the lie that we get. Suddenly the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in the milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. So I ordered a whiskey and poured it into my milk. I vaguely sensed I was not being too smart, but I felt reassured that as I was taking the whiskey with a full stomach. That's one drink. The experiment went so well, I ordered another. That's 2 drinks. I poured it in my milk. That didn't seem to bother me, so I ordered another. There's 3. The truth about Jim is, once he started drinking, he got locked up. The lie that he told himself was, I can drink if I mix it with milk. What lies have you told yourself? What lies? What lies have you told yourself? On the next page it says, you may think this is an extreme case, but to us it's not far-fetched. For this kind of thinking has been characteristic for every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim on the consequences. But there was always a curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning there inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. And the big book gives us 4 insanities. All right? 4 insanities that will get us. The first one's on page 23. And I'm in that paragraph. It says, once in a while, going down about 6, 7 lines, it says, there's the obsession. Anytime you see the word the obsession, you can substitute the word insanity, illusion, delusion, or just plain lie. All right? There's the lie. There's the insanity that somehow, someday they will beat the game. Somehow I can beat this allergic reaction. Self-knowledge will fix it. I can do this myself. And see, that's what really happens to us. Some of us have been very successful in all kinds of facets in our life. And when I was growing up, I was a Harley Davidson enthusiast. And I could tear them down and put them back together. But all of that willpower compared to using it to combat alcoholism was no avail. And I was raising registered Brahma cattle. And I could look and tell you the bloodline of the cow and the bloodline of the cowboy showing the cow. You know, but all of that knowledge failed me when it came to combating alcoholism. I was a boat enthusiast. I had those old Egg Harbor sport fishermen. I kept at the marina over in St. Augustine, and I could sit there and I would just study boats, and I'd just study them, and I'd just study them. And I see a boat coming, I could tell everybody what kind of boat it was before it got close. But all of that knowledge, when it come to combating alcoholism, failed me. But I fall for the insanity that I can beat the game with it. So I got this little voice saying, you can beat it. You don't need no help. You're tough. You're smart. You know you can't drink, so just don't drink. Then we got another lie. It's on page 30. It says, the idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession, the great insanity, the great lie of every abnormal drinker. Then we got the lie over here that says it's going to be a party. So I got one lie saying, you can beat it. You can beat it. Then I got another lie saying, it's going to be a party. I don't know about y'all, but I love a party. You know what I mean? You can beat it. You can beat it. It's going to be a party. It's going to be a party. Then we got a third lie. Oh, I'm sorry. I've covered up on page 151, which is this is my favorite page in the whole book if you'll read the whole page. But in that top paragraph, says there was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and the heartbreaking obsession, the heartbreaking insanity, the heartbreaking lie that some new miracle control will enable us to do this. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. So we got this other little lie, this other little voice in the head telling you, you just ain't figured it out yet. And I've seen this taken to extremes. You know, it's this town. If I just get away from this damn town, I'll be all right. No, it's her. I'll divorce her and marry her. I'll be all right. No, it's this job. It's this dadgum job. No, if I was properly loved, if I was properly financed, if I had the right car, if I had the right boat. If I had the right boat, I could see myself out on the lake right now. I might drink a beer. But I'm going to be so serene on that boat that I would, I need Valium. That's what I need, Suboxone. And there's always this insane lie we tell ourselves that we just ain't figured out the right combination yet. So I got 3 lies so far. The first one is I can beat the game. I don't need your daggum help. I ain't no daggum fool. Second lie is going to be a party. It's going to be a party. Third lie is, you just ain't figured it out yet, Bubba. You'll figure out the right combination. The fourth lie is on page 155. That middle paragraph, going down about 7 or 8 lines, it says, he had, of course, the familiar alcoholic obsession, the familiar alcoholic lie, the familiar alcoholic insanity that few knew of his drinking. We're drinking ourselves to death, and you actually think you're hiding it. And I'm telling you, hiding it is so important to the alcoholic. I mean, we go to great lengths to hide our liquor, to hide where we're financing our liquor, to hide where we're drinking our liquor, to hide who we're buying the liquor from. That you won't go to the same liquor store sometimes. You'll get where you'll go to 2 or 3 different handyways to buy beer because you don't want this man to know over here how much you buy in liquor at this liquor store because they might start talking to you if you're lucky enough to live in a place where there's more than one liquor store. All right, you know what I mean? It's just, or you'll lie and say you're buying it for somebody else. You know, and you actually think you're hiding this. And it's so important for you to hide your demise. See, what we're hiding is our demise. This is the insanity of alcoholism. Hiding your demise. So I got this lie that says, you can beat it. Then I got this other lie that says, it's going to be a party. Then I got this other lie that says, you just ain't figured it out right. Then I got this other lie that says, nobody knows. The insanity of alcoholism. Remember always, alcohol will kill you. Alcoholism is different. Alcoholism wants you sitting in a room just like this, feeling like you're the only one in here. Yeah. Alcoholism doesn't want to kill you. It wants to keep you alive long enough so I can use you to kill everybody around you. To destroy your children's life, to destroy your wife or your husband's life, to destroy your boss, the job's life, to destroy everything. Alcohol will kill you. Alcoholism is different. Or I'll tell you what I've seen alcoholism do. It loves to have you sober so many years that you sit in these rooms full of smug, self-righteous superiority that you're like an ice cube that if a new guy come in, he wouldn't come close to you because you're so damn unapproachable, you're bringing poison in the room sober. Yeah, alcohol. The key. Alcoholism is different. That's what we're combining. Big Daddy, your turn. Thought you were supposed to sit down there. I sure you did.
I was starting to nod off, so I.
No, there you were.
You know, I don't think I said it before because it's all about me. But what a privilege it is for us to be here and share with you these next few weeks. And, hats off to Johnny and Chrissy. They work with a lot of people in Bradford County, and they do it as a family approach. And that is so neat. I really appreciate that and I admire that. So it's, once again, good to be with you. You know, Johnny was talking about step 1 a lot. And chapter 3 in the big book, which starts on page 30, is entirely devoted to step 1. And he reminded me about that obsession. On page 30 it says, the one thing every abnormal drinker has in common. And they say it that way. The one thing every abnormal drinker has in common is the obsession that someday he will control and enjoy his drinking. The persistence of that illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it to the gates of insanity and death. Now, an obsession means our mind is focused on something to the exclusion or the rationalization of anything else. And that's what happens. When I see guys go back out, they don't go back out because it's going to get worse. They're going to think this time. You heard the story about the guy that put whiskey in the milk. You know, you heard the guy that had self-knowledge. The obsession, someday I'll control and enjoy it. And, you know, the other thing is you know, we have 4 different textbooks in AA. And I don't know if it's here, I can't see it, but it's in our literature. It says frequently asked questions. And if that piece is there, it's on page 30 at the top of there. And the question is, are there textbooks for AA? And this is conference approved literature, we say, yeah, there's basically 4. The first one in our basic textbook is the big book. Now, a textbook is not a novel you read once and done. A textbook is something you study and restudy and use it as a reference. That's the first one. The second one, any guesses? 12 and 12. Yeah, very good. Third one, anybody know?
5 love languages.
The what?
The 5 love languages.
No.
That's what she said.
Good. Hit him up for another $5.
I would highly recommend to read it though.
So, the third one would be Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age. And the fourth one, you got to look up yourself. I'm not going to tell you. Well, and a lot of you know that already. But in the book Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age, you know, one of the things we try to learn in AA is to understand ourselves. How do we tick? What makes us different? We know we're different than normal drinkers. Okay? We know that if I'm an abnormal drinker, and I am, I have an obsession. And that obsession will keep popping up all the time. Someday I'm going to control and enjoy this. I'll prove it to you. Johnny just went through all of that. Now in the book Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age, which is really an early history of AA, and it covers our 3 legacies. Okay, and our 3 legacies are truths, are things that we do. Okay, and I would hope you'd know what they are, because that's part of our service. But in that, in the back, there's an appendix. And in the appendix, and it's on, what I'm going to reference is on page 311. And this was a paper written by a doctor, an MD and a psychiatrist named Dr. Thielman. And he wrote it and it was published in the American Psychiatric American Psychiatric Journal. I don't read that stuff every day, so I don't remember. But anyhow, this was published in 1944, long before it was fashionable and profitable to deal with alcoholism. And he wrote in there, he did a study on our egos. And the thing I always have underlined, because it's so important to me to remember, and it's where this selfishness, self-centeredness comes from. He says, characteristic of so-called typical alcoholic is a narcissistic, egocentric core, dominated by feelings of omnipotence, intent on maintaining at all costs its inner integrity. You didn't know you were that good, did you? Narcissistic. I only think of me. You don't have to go too far. Look at Hollywood. Narcissistic. Egocentric. Once again, ego is us. Focused on ourselves. Core. That's the center of it. Feelings of omnipotence. Omnipotence is all powerful. I'm better than all of you. I'm stronger than all of you. I can do all this better than all of you. An intent on maintaining at all costs its inner integrity. And integrity means we're protecting ourselves. So I'm focused on me. I'm feeling all powerful, and I'm going to protect me at all costs. And he says, while these characteristics are found in other maladjustments, they appear relatively pure in the culture in alcoholic after alcoholic. Hey, we're winners again. Okay? And he goes on to say, other common characteristics among problem drinkers, he says the best terms that could find are a group of qualities noted as defiant individuality and grandiosity. Defiant individuality. Don't try to tell me how to do this. I know how to do this. And grandiosity. Inward, the alcoholic brooks no control or accepts no control from man or God. He, the alcoholic, is and must be master of his own destiny. He will fight to the end to preserve that position. And that's just a small excerpt from the paper. I love it so much because it reminds me of me. And then when I get to the big book and I look at step 3, and it says selfishness, self-centeredness, that is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Selfishness, self-centeredness. That's why we do the rest of the steps, folks. Okay? And what I like is a transition between step 3 and 4 in the book. We'll get into 4, 5, and 6 next week. But it says our liquor was but a symptom. So we had to get down to causes and conditions. You know, most all of us came in, we thought we just wanted to control and enjoy our drinking. That was my obsession. But that's just the beginning. I had to get down to causes and conditions. What's that mean? That means if I don't want to live the life I was living, I need to do something different. What does that something different? I need to take action. I need to find somebody that knows how the hell this works. I need somebody that's willing to take me through the steps in the big book, not the bullshit book, in the big book. Well, that's why we started these step meetings years ago. I got the meetings and I'd be hearing, well, this is this and this and don't do this. And, you know, I remember years ago we had a young guy came to our meetings. This was up in Concord, New Hampshire. I had already moved from Cleveland. And he came in and we were on, I forget what step, 5 or 6. And you know, we did a step a week and or longer if it took longer. And he said, wow. And we said to him, well, how long have you been sober? He said, well, 2 years. We said, well, what step are you on? He said, step 2. And I said, you've been sober 2 years? And he said, yeah. He said, my sponsor said you only have to work a step a year. He said, what do you think? I said, I think you need to get a new sponsor. You find it hard to believe I didn't make a lot of friends. But you know, this is about life and death. You know, we forget that sometimes. There's people out there dying. And you know, this isn't some game, this is what this book does, is it shows me the roadmap on what I need to do. You know, Johnny talked about that, and I'm going to turn it and let him finish up here in a minute, which I know gets him excited. But it reminds me of a story years ago. It was told to me, and this is a guy. He's up north, and it's cold and it's frozen, and he's walking down this road. And you can see the tire Mark said, it's a little gravel road, and there's, some puddles of frozen, of ice. And in the midst of this road, snakes are cold-blooded things. And they don't, when it's cold, they move very, very slow. Or, if they stay out in it, maybe it kills them. But anyhow, this man's walking down there. He's got his coat on. It's cold as hell, and he sees this snake in the road. And the snake says to him, he says, "Mister, pick me up." He says, "I'm cold." He said, "I'm frozen." He said, "Pick me up and let me get warm. Be kind." And the man says, "No, I can't pick you up." He said, "You're going to bite me." The snake says, "No, I won't bite you." He said, "I promise." The man says, "No." He said, "You're a snake. You're going to bite me." And the snake continues to plead with him and plead with him. "Oh, Mr. Kindness, show some love, tolerance." And finally the man relents and he picks the snake up. It's almost stiff, and he puts it under his coat. And the snake warms up, and the man goes walking along, and the snake, starts to feel better, and all of a sudden the snake bites him. And the man takes him out and throws him down, and he said, "You promised you weren't going to bite me." And the snake says, "Yeah, but you knew what I was when you picked me up." Alcohol. Johnny, wrap it up.
Step one, powerless over alcohol. Can't control my desire and my consumption. My life's unmanageable. I can't fix me. It's basically as simple as it is. Step one is the problem. Step two is the solution. Step three, I decide to seek the solution. Somewhere between steps 4 and step 9, I'm going to have that spiritual awakening. It's going to relieve me of the obsession of the first drink. Steps 10, 11, 12, keep it alive. The steps are just simple. My old mechanic's name was Earl Tanner. So I'm driving my old diesel truck down the road, man. I'm in some motor. And all of a sudden, all the dash lights come on, smoke started coming out of the motor. I can't get it to go, and I try to fix it, and I can't fix it. Step 1, I'm powerless in my motor, and I can't manage to fix it. Step 2, I believe Earl Tanner can fix my motor. Step 3, I make a decision, turn my motor over to Earl Tanner. Step 4, Earl says, "Johnny, I'm not going to do for you what you can do for yourself. Why don't you make a list of every defective part in that motor?" Step 4, I make a list of every defective part in that motor. Step 5, I admit, "Oil, these parts are bad." All right. Step 6, I'm ready to have Earl throw these parts away. Step 7, I have Earl throw these defective parts away. Step 8, I got a list of new parts I need to put in my motor. Step 9, I mend my motor. Step 10, I continue to keep an inventory on not just my motor, but my whole truck. I'm checking oil. Man, I'm checking air in the tires, the air filter, and everything. Step 11, I improve my conscious contact with my mechanic. I start hanging out in the garage. All right? Step 12, I'm driving down the road, see you broke down, and say, "Hey, baby, the old Tanner can fix your car." That's how simple these steps are, okay? Step 2, and step 2, knowing the problem, step 2 asks us to seek a solution. Look at it. You think there can be another solution. And we go through a lot of stuff in step 2. And God, I've heard some people who have blown step 2 so far out of. Your own personal story is going to help somebody believe more than anything else. It tells us, first of all, that we have to set aside prejudice and the doctor's opinion. Everything bad you know about God, everything good you know about God, let's set it aside because you missed the boat one way or the other. Look, I've worked with guys who were very devout, just devout, and they were drunk. All right? I worked with guys who were atheists. And guess what they were? They were drunk. So I got the devout one is drunk and the atheist is drunk. They both missed something, all right? And I want to tell you, there's no such a thing as a daggum atheist, all right? Because either you believe in some kind of higher power, but there's one thing you always believed in, the God of self. And that's what drives the alcoholic, the God of self. That was your higher power. If we're not careful, it'll come back, the God of self. And it says it's driven by 100 forms of fear, self-seeking, self-delusion, self-pity. That's the God of self. So we need to start at 0 with God. Have a whole new relationship. See, everybody's going to be different. The prejudice I had to set aside when I come in here, that God was a punishing God and there's no way that He would help me because of what I had done. That was the prejudice I had to set aside because I had broken about every commandment there was. All right? Some people's prejudice they got to set aside is there is a God. But it asks us, will you start at 0? Will you start at 0? And let me tell you the story. About 10 years ago, one of the byproducts of the sawmill was shavings, because off the planer mill we sell it to horse farms. Okay, we set a truck of shavings down towards the Williston area. Our truck driver ran a stop sign, and another semi hit him, bad wreck. My aunt goes down there. They take both of them to the hospital and everything. She sees the other boy, and we don't hear nothing else from it, man. We're already ready for the lawyers and stuff like that, because don't hear nothing. 10 years later, there's a boy that comes into the mill. This has been a couple months ago, a year ago. Comes into the mill to pick up a load of shavings, and he's from the Williston area. And they ask him, say, "Hey, do you know such and such boy that used to run a shaving truck down there? He hit our truck one time. We pulled out in front of him." And the guy said, "Yeah, I know him. He's a highway patrol. I know him." 2 days later, we get this phone call. The guy calls and says, "Hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm the one that got in the wreck with y'all's truck. Thank y'all." Thank you? So, well, when I got in that wreck, they took me to the hospital, and they did some total scans, and they found some cancer in my body that never would have been found had it been for that wreck, and I'd have died. Do you believe in God, a power that can take something like that and save a boy's life, can save you? I know that story's true because it happened to us. There's this boy, he's such a shy boy. And he's just such a shy boy. And he looked at his daddy one day, and he was about 20-something. He says, and just a handsome, good-looking boy, but just totally shy. He says, "Daddy, you think I'll ever find anybody?" He was kind of depressed. He never met a girl, because he wanted a girlfriend so bad, but he was just so shy and everything. And he went to a little church event where there was different churches that got together at this one boy's house. And he met this girl there. And she'd had a problem growing up where she had this illness where part of her body matured faster than the other. And she'd underwent several operations. And she told him about that. And he told her about her shyness. And they both looked at each other and said, "I don't care." And they loved each other right there. Got married, 2 kids. I know that story's true because it's the story of my son. Do you think a power that can take 2 lonely people who felt so apart and put them together can help you? I can go on and on. There was this girl, she had a family, mother and father, and happy little family. She was the oldest, and the mother and father divorced. Things got bad. Now she's really the caretaker for the other 2 young siblings. And her mother's working nights and nurse and stuff, and she's taking care of everybody. And to make things worse, she finds this little boy, and he's an old redneck boy, and she thinks she's going to find happiness. Comes to find out he develops alcoholism, stays drunk, things get bad. But because of the pain of the divorce, she refuses to leave. And he finally gets sober, and things start coming together. And this last Christmas, she was sitting there with 2 grandbabies, and everybody just looking at her, just smiling and happy. I know that story is true because it's the story of my wife. Do you believe that a power that can take a tragic childhood, tragic marriage, and bring happiness can restore you to safety? There was this boy, chronic alcoholic, got put in a nut house for alcoholism. He was a rager. He was just a rager. Just raged at people around him. Hated every moment. Was in there 5 days. There was this black guy named Don came in there, a truck driver, who didn't pay much attention to that raging language. Stood up to him. Got him to come in his room. Got him on his knees. Had him praying some prayers to accept God's help. And he did right there. 5 days sober, and the other guy was only 3 days sober, the guy who 12-stepped him. I know that story's true. It's my story. Do you believe that a power could take 2 people in a nut house, one 3 days sober, one 5 days sober, and the guy 3 days sober lead the other guy to God? If it could do that, what can he do for you? What can he do for you? See, our own personal stories about things that we have happened and seen happen can do more for somebody in the step 2 area than anything that we can philosophically talk about and everything. Any kind of theological talk that you can give somebody about God. Any kind of big wordy thing that you can tell them about God. Your witness at this point is going to break away the shells more than anything else. And then we come to step 3, where I make that decision. And step 3, at its simplest form, y'all, is I make a decision to work the rest of the steps. Really, I'm sorry. I wish it was big, complicated, something pie in the sky stuff. But it's not, because I don't know how to turn my will in life over. See, my will is my mind, my thoughts, my desires, my dreams, my aspirations. What drives me is my thinking. And my thinking put me right in the nut house. And my life is the result of living with that type of thinking. Are you willing to turn that? And really, look what they're asking you to do. Will you turn the nastiness over and your dreams at the same time? In the doctor's opinion, Dr. Silkworth says we must find a power greater than ourselves to recreate our life. Boy, that's some powerful stuff. A recreated life is a powerful thing. But Bill goes further in step 3. He says we were reborn, where you don't even recognize you. Recreated is powerful stuff. I'm not drinking the way I was. I got my job back and my wife back. I've recreated my life. To be reborn is a whole different deal. Some of us want to settle for the recreation, and you never get the rebirth. The 3rd step prayer, and I'm real quick. It says, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Total sign of surrender. Here I am. Do with me as you want. Well, don't have any fear about this. God was cool before the word cool was ever invented. All right? I've seen guys who come to me and say, Johnny, we're going to start this little group over here because we think there's a need. No, God wanted that group started. He's just letting them take credit for it. That's how cool God is. God will give you, He'll never ask you to do something that He doesn't give you the passion to do it. And you'll be thinking you're doing it that is your ideal. No, it wasn't. It was God's. All right? And I've had guys come to me and say, Johnny, I know I'm 40 years old, but I'm going back to college. No, God wanted them to go back to school to finish their degree so they can feed their family. But God's so cool, He's going to let them take credit for it. So, you want to read it? God, I offer myself to thee to build it. Man, baby, doll, you don't understand. He's going to put some passion in you to do something. How cool is that? Relieve me of the bondage of self. The God of self I have served. The God of self. That I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties so victory over will bear witness. It didn't say take away my difficulties so victory over will get my wife back, my car back, and the job back. It did not say that. It said bear witness. In the beginning of this book, from the beginning to the end, it's about being a witness. It talks about we become His agent. Now some people, you ask them, what do you do? Well, I'm a nurse. No, you're not. You're an agent of God disguised as a nurse. I'm a plumber. No, you're not. You're an agent of God disguised as a plumber. Are you accepting the agent's role? In the 3rd step, I want to be an agent. I want to be an agent of God. How cool is it? How cool is it to sit and watch the stuff that we get to see? You don't understand the stuff. You know, you can sit in the meetings and come and recreate. But to be reborn, to see the miracles, the fun, the tragedies, and be part and be of help is a whole different thing. Will you make the decision to turn over these resentments, regrets, despair, judgment, fear, lies, depression, doom and gloom, discontent? You want to give that up, or you want to keep it? Make the decision. That's all I say. We got it.